Okay, so hi Sean. Yeah, today we'll be talking about for loops and we'll see how powerful that they can be. Yeah, so don't worry if this lesson is a little bit more challenging than the previous lessons because it's natural for loop to be a hurdle for programming for people who are new to programming. So yeah, let's try our best and yeah. Okay, so first of all, let me just open a Replit. Later I'll instead of going through all the slides and then letting you do exercises, I'll be doing like I'll be going switching between the two lah, because halfway through I'll tell you to do exercises. Okay, so yeah, let's begin. So okay, so let's say right, what are for loops? They are a way of repeating a line of code multiple times or multiple lines of code multiple times. So let's say we have so let's say we had so let's say we had okay, wait, let me just do this in a vertical like this. Yeah, okay, so um if I had a following code, if I had created a list, right? In the previous lesson we learned about lists and we had 3 elements of the list, and let's say I wanted to append 5 to the list 3 times. So if I do this, does it make sense that when I press run, right now when I press run, I appended 1 time only so far? You understand this code, right? So you create a list, then after appending, if I printed this before appending, then I'll see there is 1, 3, 2 only. But if I print it after, you see that if I print before and after, you see the changes. Okay,
Yeah.
so far. So what if I want to append it 3 times? One way is to copy the code and paste it 3 times like that. So it appends it 3 times. So you want to guess what the second line is going to be? The second output.
Oh, as in you append 5 3 times.
Yeah, correct. So
1 3 2 5 5 5.
correct. Yeah, very good. So it appends it like that. So sure, you could, if you want to do the same code multiple times, you could copy and paste it, but there's a more efficient way, and that's using something called a for loop. So let me just delete away this this thing first of all. Then you see the value of for loop later. So to repeat an action multiple times in Python, right? I use the for loop, and to do so, I write for I in range, and then I open the round bracket, and inside the round bracket I put 3 for the number of times I want to repeat. Then I type colon, right? The colon is important, and when I press enter, you see that there's this spacing that has appeared. So this is known as indentation, and we saw it with the case of the if else also, right? In the conditionals there's also indentation. So now whatever code I write here, right? Let's say I write my list of 10 5, and let's say I write some other code, let's say print anyhow like that. Now lines 4 and 5, because there's a spacing, they are considered to be inside the for loop. Okay, so this indentation tells you that the code after the indentation is inside the for loop. But you see line 6 doesn't have the spacing, right? That means line 6 is not inside the for loop.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so so if I go ahead and press run on this, you see that Python has printed as a line 2 is printed the list, right, before appending it. Then now is appended 3 times, okay, as you can see from the final result. And in between there's the mail, which it prints 3 times. But I'll get to what's going on inside the for loop later on. So if I press run, you see that I've appended 3 times also, just that now this time instead of copying pasting the code total of 3 times, I use a for loop. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so the value in this is that now you can change this number, right, to any number you want. Let's say I want to append 5 10 times. Then instead of needing to write out the same line of code 10 times, right, I just change the number here from 3 to 10, and now you see it happens 10 times. Okay, makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so a for loop allows you to run code within the for loop, right, denoted in this by this indentation multiple times. Okay, so yeah, so the variable I over here, it can actually be any other variable as well. So you can call it, let's say, my variable, right? As long as it's a valid variable name, it works also. So the I is, I'll show you what the I does later. Okay, so far?
Yeah.
So you can write for X in range, for J in range, for I in range, it all works. But you cannot have it being an existing variable, like it must be a new variable name. Yeah. So let's talk about how the for loop works. So the for loop, so using the following code snippet, right? Okay, so if I have just gonna delete this one now. So let's write a print statement saying before, then I have a for loop for I in range that executes 3 times, right? And inside, let's say I just say print I, and perhaps I can print inside, and I print I, and print after. So I said that I was a variable, right, of my choosing. I can collect, if I run this, you see that the results are going to be, if I run this, you see that the result is, it says before, right? Then it says inside 0, and it says inside 1, inside 2, and after. So let's understand what's going on. So when Python, remember, it executes things sequentially, so it goes to the first line. So when it sees the first line, it executes print before, which is why we see before appear on the screen. Okay, so far? Then it goes to the next line, which is a for loop. So now it will execute lines 3 and 4 a total of 3 times, right? Which is, and it will execute it sequentially as well. So it will first print inside, which is why we see inside pop out on the console. Then it prints I. And at the moment, right, for the first iteration, I will have the value 0. That's why you see 0. Then, so it executed these 2 lines one time already. Then now, because these 2 lines are inside the for loop, it will continue to execute these 2 lines 2 more times. So you execute print inside again, which is why we see after 0, right, it says inside. Then you print I, and in the second iteration, I has the value 1. So that's why you see 1 appear on the screen. And perhaps you can guess that for the third iteration, right, we print inside once again, we see inside over here, and then we see it prints I, and for the third iteration, I has the value 2, which is why we see 2 appear on the screen. And now that this code inside has executed a total of 3 times, right, because we wrote for I in range 3 over here, then um, then it exits the for loop because it's finished 3 times already, so it prints after. So is this output completely clear?
Wait, so like the purpose of print I is to get the second one. You get the second inside or the first inside.
Uh, so the purpose of the print I is to print the numbers 0, 1, and 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if I remove this one, right? If I remove print I, then you see that it just says before, and then remember that for loop executes whatever's inside the block, inside the for loop block 3 times. In this case, you execute this inside 3 times. So it
Oh,
says
okay.
inside.
Okay, I understand.
But if I interleave it, okay, if I, let's say, let's not go to I first. If I, let's say, I print inside 2, right? So you want to guess what's going to be the code? What's going to be the output?
Uh, is it before inside, and then inside two, inside, and then
Uh,
after?
you're close, but actually it's inside
Oh,
2,
okay.
inside 2, inside 2. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so all right, perhaps inside, when it's inside the for loop, right? Each iteration, it will execute line 3, then line 4. Then you go into the next iteration. So you go 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. Make sense?
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. Yeah. But if I wrote something like this for I in range 3, if I wrote like this, then you'll be right to say that now it will be 3, 3, 3, and then 4, 4, 4. Because, yeah, does this make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if I go ahead and print, let's say I print I, right? Can you guess what the output is going to be?
Uh, before and then
So the first iteration will be 0. Second iteration, I will be 1.
And then, yeah, before 0, 1, 2, after.
Correct, very good. Yeah. So yeah, that's very good. So what if I do print inside like that? So remember you execute line 3, line 4, line 3, line 4, line 3, line 4. So can you guess the output?
Before inside 0, inside 1, inside 2, and then after.
Correct, very good. So you've gotten the idea. Okay, so now let's up it up a notch. What if I do I times 2? Right? What if instead of printing I print I times 2? Do you want to guess?
Is it before inside 0, inside 2, inside 4, after?
Correct, very good. Awesome. So now, yeah, you've gotten the hang of it. So you see that for when you go to the for loop, right? In summary, when you go to the for loop, Python would look at the code inside the for loop and you'll say, okay, I'll execute this entire block n times where how many times wherever times you put the whatever number you put over here inside the range. Yeah, so then you'll go sequentially. So in Python, you'll see as 1, right? Then you go to 2, then you go 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. And then since 3, 4 has occurred total of 3 times already, then you go 5. So yeah, I think you got it. And for each one of the iterations, right, I will take on the values 0, 1, and 2. So for the first iteration, I will have the value 0. For the second iteration, I will have the value 1. So this I is a variable that helps you keep track of the number of times that the for loop has occurred. And you can use this I to do useful things later on. So yeah, so this is another example. So in this example, it prints inside, right? Then it prints 0, 0. Inside, it prints 3, 1. Inside, 6, 4. Do you understand this code?
Yeah, I understand.
Makes sense, right? Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, so now yeah, now maybe I could invite you to go over to the Replit, go to the Teams and see the follow exercises. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm in the first one.
Okay, sure, sure. All right. Let me just go turn the icon. So for the first exercise, you see the question on the right. I wanted you to print meow 30 times. So it's not it's not creating a list. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. So if you run that, then you just print it 1 time. Um,
uh, and it's, is it the for,
so you need to put the for before. If you
oh,
see,
okay,
yeah, you see the syntax, right? You need to put the for before printing because the print meow will be inside your for loop. Yeah,
oh,
correct. Very good, very good. So for I range 30, right? And you write a colon. You don't need after when you write the after you write the for loop, you need a colon. You can see on the right in the instructions panel. So as in
oh,
the after, yeah, yeah, you can follow the template over there. So it's for I in range, then colon. For I in range 30, then colon. Yeah, correct. Then now we press enter. You see that Python has automatically created the space for you. If you want to type the space yourself, you press tab.
oh, okay.
Hmm. Right now is complaining because you didn't have the spacing.
Oh,
Because if you want the print meow to be inside the for loop, then you need to have a tab before your print set, like in the beginning of the line, right? There needs to be the indentation.
oh, how do I make the
You
tab?
can press tab.
Oh, okay.
Tab is for, so you put your cursor before the print and you press tab. Yeah,
Okay.
correct. Yeah. It's also two spaces lah. So, okay, so
Oh,
awesome. So now you see that it's printed meow 30 times. If you change, so now in the second instruction, you change 30 to any number that you like, right? Let's say you
yeah.
change it you change it to something else. Okay, so you press run. Yeah, so now if you
Oh,
count it, right, you're gonna see that it's a total of 14 times. Make sense?
yeah.
So now in this first example, we have learned how to write a for loop, right? And namely, we've learned that the indentation is important and the colon is important. So the two things that people mostly miss out on is the colon and the indentation. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now if we can go over to the second lesson, the second question.
Okay. Okay, I'm inside.
Okay. Very good. So if you wanted to, you can write 10 inside the round brackets. Yeah. And then remember your colon. Very good. So you see now Python automatically give you the,
Oh,
so now you can print, right? Do you know what to print if you want to generate the number 0 to 9?
do I print I?
Correct. Very good. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, if you go ahead and press run, yeah, you see that it prints 0 to 9. Awesome. So yeah, okay. Then now the second instruction, right? You see that it tells you to edit the code to print 0 to print 1 to 10 instead. So what if you wanted to print 1 to 10 instead of 0 to 9?
Mm,
Remember that the print statement is a,
do I print I plus 1?
yep, very good. So if you print I plus 1, then you press run, you see that now it prints 1 to 10. So remember that the I, right, itself, the I variable itself is still taking on values 0 to 9, right? It's still going from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But because you're printing to the screen, I plus 1, it prints 0 plus 1, which is 1, right? 1 plus 1, which is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, and so on until 9 plus 1, which is 10. Okay, so there's a key distinction between what you're printing to the screen, right, which is I plus 1, and the value of I itself, which is 0 to 9. Okay. Yeah, so very good. Yeah, so actually that's all for the second question. Now you can go over the third one.
Okay.
Oh, okay, there's a small typo in my question. But the first one is just 1 to 10. Yeah, ignore the even numbers.
Oh,
Yeah, ignore the word even. So it's just what you did previously. You missed out about the colon. If you see that they didn't give you the indentation, right, then that would be a bit suspicious. And you can tell that yeah,
okay.
you missed out the colon. Then now you need to manually put in the tab yourself. Good, good. But if you press run, wait, instead of 1 to 10, you got 1 to 9 only. So do you know what?
Oh, okay, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, good, good. Okay, very good. So now you can edit this code, right, to print even numbers from 2 to 20. So what I mean is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20.
Uh, hmm.
So yeah, remember that your I is always going to be from it's always going to be from 0 to 9. There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, at least for now. Your I is always going to be 0 from 9, 0 to 9. So it's how do you generate 2 to 20 based on your value of I. So right now, from your values of 0 to 9, you have managed to output to the screen 1 to 10. But how do you change that to 2 to 20?
Uh, what do I put?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so remember how you got from 0 to 9 to 1 to 10, right? You did I plus 1.
Yeah,
Yeah. So if you want to go from 1 to 10 to 2 to 20, right? You can
yeah.
take,
I put I plus 2.
can give it a try. Can try. If you try I plus 2,
Plus 2 is just 2 to 11, right?
yeah, correct. So plus 2 is just 2 to 11. Yeah, you're close, you're close. Right? What can you do? You see, 2 is 1 times 2, right? 4
Yeah.
is 2 times 2. Then 6 is 3
Oh,
times 2.
so I should just put I plus 2 times I plus 1.
Yeah, correct. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, we got it. So 2 times I plus 1. Yeah, with the brackets. So that, yeah. Okay,
Oh,
awesome. So that's how you see that your I, right? Python, when you write for I in range 10, right? Python would say, okay, fine. You can have the I to keep track of your iterations, and I will take on values 0 to 9. But you cannot really force Python to say, your I is like, it's fixed at a certain, the for loop takes care of it. You can't change the value of I. But what you can do is you can use the data provided to you from I and morph it into something that you want to output to the screen. Make sense?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So you're getting the hang of it. So lastly will be, can you write instruction 3, or can you generate square numbers from 1 to 100? So instead of um 2, 4, 6, 8, you want to do 1, 4, 9, 16, so on. Yeah, very good. So you change the 2 away to,
Do I put like 2 asterisks?
yeah, sure, sure. You can do that if you want. So you can do, so you can do I plus 1, 2 asterisk 2, or you can do I plus 1 times I plus 1. That works too.
Oh, oh yeah.
Yeah, both of them will work the same way. Oh, okay. So you just like how you multiply, right? You need the times in coding. You need them to make it explicit. So yeah,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
awesome. Yeah, so it's very powerful, right? Just like that, you have actually created, you have generated the square numbers already. Yeah, great. So okay, so if we can return, yeah, you understand what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great, great. So, okay, if we can return to the screen now, you can see my screen. So, yeah, so what I taught you so far was how to use the for I in range. On top of that, right, if you want to, what if you don't want to start from 0? So if let's say for I in range, um, 10, right, print I, what if I don't want to start from 0? Well, one way, let's say I want to print, let's say 5 to 9 only. one way is to set this to equals to 5 and then do, so if I just wanted to print, if I just wanted to print 5 to 9, right? One way is to do this, right? This makes sense, right? This code.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so I will only take on the values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then as a result, um, each of these plus 5 will give you 5 to 9. That's one way. So this okay so far?
Yeah.
Okay. But another way is instead instead of I can, the range actually takes in two, you can pass in a start value also lah. So I didn't tell you this just now because I wanted you to understand the computational thinking behind. Yeah, I want to understand the logic behind it. So if I do 5 like that to 10, right? Then I remove the plus 5, then it also generates 5 to 9. So you can start from any number and end at any number. So if I want to do 2 to 5 like that, right? Then you print 2 to 4. So just one thing to know is it's exclusive of the ending one. Just like how when you wanted to generate from 0 to 9, right? You put 10, but 10 doesn't appear. So likewise, if you wanted to generate from say 2 to 4, right? You the last number that you want to see, you put 1 plus that one. So basically it's exclusive of ending number. Okay, makes sense?
Oh, okay.
So if I run this, you see it's 2 to 4. So what if I do, let's say I times I? Can you guess the output now?
I times I, 4, 9, and 16.
Yep, awesome. So yeah, so actually this isn't too different from what we learned just now, just that now we're starting from a different number. Okay, so that's just something to note. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so that's range. So the first parameter is a start and second parameter is an end. Okay, so now I'll demonstrate this once, right? But then after that I have an exercise for you to work through it as well. So let's say I have a list, right, which has the values let's say 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. Okay. So what if I wanted to, so let's say I write a for loop, right? For I range 5. And I put 5 here. The reason is because I want the 5 is the length of the list. Okay. We shall see later. So if I print I first of all, right now this will just print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. But you see, right, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it coincidentally is the indices of my list. Namely, right, if I print my list index 0, right, and I print my list index 1, 2, 3, 4, if I did this, and let's say I commented out these two, let's say I deleted these two lines. If I did this, right, you see that I'm just printing out all the elements of the list. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So you see that if I print my list 0 is the first element, and so on. This one what we covered yesterday. So what it, can I use so instead of doing this manually, right, printing out the list elements of the list manually, can I use a for loop to do it? So if the I takes on values 0 to 4, which is conveniently the indices we saw right over here, then doesn't that mean we can simply put my list I like that, and if I press run, right, you see that, so the first iteration it will print my list 0 because I takes on the value 0 in the first iteration. So the first iteration it prints 3. Then the second iteration it prints my list index 1, which is the value 1, the second item here. Third iteration you print my list index 2, which is the value 4. So yeah, does this code make sense to you?
Yeah.
So if I print, let's say I, right, and print my list I, can you guess what the output is going to be? Or maybe let's make it even a bit harder. Let's say I print, okay, never mind. Let's keep it as this. Can you guess what the output for this code is going to be?
Uh, is it
You can just give it a hazard a guess. We can do it one iteration at a time. So in the first iteration, I takes on the value 0. So it prints two numbers. Can you guess what the two numbers in the first iteration is going to be?
Is it, wait. Is it 5?
Okay, close. It is the first in the first iteration, it's actually going to be I takes on the value 0, right? So the
Oh,
first
yeah.
thing it's going to do is going to print 0. Then after that, it's going to print my list 0, which has the value
3.
correct. So the first iteration is going to print 0 and then 3. And then can you guess what the second iteration is going to be? So in the second iteration, I has the value 1.
Oh, 1,
Correct. 1. Then this one?
0, 1, 1 also.
Correct. So my list index 1 is 1. So in the third iteration, so I now has the value 2.
And then 4.
So it's going to print 2 and the 4. Make sense?
Yeah.
And in the fourth iteration, it's going to print 3 and my list index 3, which is 1. So if I go ahead and run this, you see first iteration, okay, perhaps it'll be easier if I put a divider like this. So let's just put like that as a divider. So you see that in the first iteration, right, I put the triple equal sign here. I put a string here just to divide it. So the first iteration is 0 and 3. Second iteration is index 1 and the value minus 1, which is 1. The third iteration is going to be 2 and 4 over here. Fourth iteration is going to be 3 and 1. And the last iteration is going to be 4 for the I, right? I takes on the value 4, and it's going to be my list index 4, which is 5. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, what if okay, yeah, never mind. So my list, so that's how you access the elements of the list. So in addition to that, you can also modify the elements of the list. So let's say as index I equals to I times 2. So when I print my list after that, you want to first give a guess before I analyze it for you? With you? If I print my list, what's the numbers that are going to appear?
In my list, is it 3 and then 3, 4, and then 5?
Not quite, but good try, good try. So in the list right now is going to be it's going to be 0, 2, 4, 6. And the reason is because in the first iteration, we're effectively setting my list index 0, right? Equals
Yeah.
to 0 times 2. Make sense?
Yeah.
And then in the second iteration, we're setting my list index 1 to 1 times 2. Make sense? And in the third iteration, index 2 to 2 times 2, which is why at the end of it, right, you see that the first item is 0, second is 2, and third one is 4, and so on. Do you understand this part?
So this is like not related to the first line.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah, because we're replacing the values of the first line already.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. So okay, that was just a small secret. So if I print my list index I, then you see that once again we get back. You're just accessing the elements, right? This one, okay, right? Then okay, but the thing is, what if I add two numbers behind, let's say I add 9 and 2, then if I press run, it only prints 31415. And the reason is because the maximum value of I will only be 4. So the maximum index we ever access is going to be index 4, right? Makes sense?
Yeah.
So that's why we only access this part of the array. So what number will I need to change this if I want to access all the elements in the list? What number will I need?
Change for I in range to 6.
Okay.
No, to 7.
Yeah, very good. Correct,
Yeah.
correct. 7. Because the maximum index now is 1, right? Is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? The last element is index 6. So in order for I to go from 0 to 6, right, I need to put 7 over here. So yeah, indeed, that's correct. So you see, right, 7 is also coincidentally the length of the list, right?
Yeah.
So just now, when I put 5, it's because 5 was the length of the list. But now I put 7, is because 7 is the length of the list. So can you see that if I just change this to length of my list, right? Now this number, right, it will calculate the length of the list, right? And then put it into the range.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's really cool, right? Because now if I press run, okay, we see all the numbers. But let's say I change it all the way back to 5 elements a list, then we see that is length of my list now recalculates, right? It calculates the length of the list to be 5. So now this effectively for I in range 5, right? And as I change more elements in the list, right? Then so let's say I do this, then let's say I wanted to append some guys, right? Let's say I did this. So let's say I append 1, 2, 3, and let's say 4, right? Then now the length of the list right at this moment when it calculates it is going to be your initial 5, right, plus the 4 new elements that I add. So now when I run this, it goes ahead and prints all the elements in the list. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So you see that for I in range length list is how and then print my list index I is how I access every element of the list, right? Regardless of the length of the list. The list can be any length it wants, and this will access all the elements in it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So this concept covers the concept of for loops, right? Repeating multiple times. Then it covers the concept of finding the length of the list, as well as iterating through the list using the index. So accessing it using the index, like the square bracket here. So yeah. So now that I've gone through this guided example, you can go over to question 4 in the Python lessons.
Okay. Okay, let me check.
Okay, remember to when you want to set the mileage to equals to the value, you need to use equal sign. Yep, good.
Is it like this?
Yep, correct. Yeah. But then you have a spacing here that's unnecessary. You try to run this, you say, yeah. So okay, so go ahead and run this. Okay, you see that it prints 5. So because length of my list, it just computes the length of this list that you created up here. Okay, so far.
Yeah.
Okay, then now in instruction 3, you can kind of copy the code I provided here. So inside you can put 5 for the moment, right? Later we'll change it to, okay, very good. Print I, we press run. And you see that the 5 first comes from the print at the line 2, that's the one that gives you the length of the list, which is 5. Then after that, your for loop will print the 0 to 4. Okay, so far.
Yeah.
Okay, then now, right? Yeah, so now no, the 0 to 4 is the indices of the list. So if you do instruction 5, you replace print I with print my list I. Yeah, you see that now it prints all the elements in the list.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now yeah, so yeah, it's using a for loop is much more efficient than printing manually. Yep, so very good. You're doing step 6. And yeah, if you press run, then you'll see that it doesn't access all the elements in the list. So yep, you need to change the, that's right. Yep, very good.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. So now you have managed to iterate through, yeah, using the list using for loops. Great. Okay.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah, the understanding of the for loops is important. Yeah. So yeah, so it's good that you're getting it quite fast, because usually for loops is the trouble that most people face. Okay, so if you go back to the my screen, go back to seeing my screen, then I'll show you some other things that for loops can do, but don't worry, we won't be covering them in detail because yeah. So okay, so if you want to access list elements, then you can use the for loops, right? And put range length my list. So this length my list would automatically calculate the length of the list that you're trying to access. And as a result, your variable I, would vary according to the length of the list, always going from 0 to the length of the list minus 1. And in so doing, when you put my list square bracket I, you're accessing all the indices. You're accessing the indices of all the elements in the list sequentially. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So so you can use this to not only access elements in the list, but you can also use it to modify. So let's say I have a list, right? 1, 3, 2, 0, minus 1, 2. And let's say I wanted to double all the elements in the list. So the output I want is the list doubled. So the output I want is 2, 6, 4, 0, minus 2, 4. That's the goal. So to do so, I can set my list index I to equals to that element, right, times 2. So now it'll go through each list. So on the right hand side, it'll calculate each element of the list multiplied by 2. And when you set the left hand side equals to the right hand side, then the left hand side is each element in the list. So you're going through, right, what them one by one, and each one that you visit the first one, you visit the second one, you visit the third one. Each time you visit one guy, you say, hey, what's your current value? Okay, I take your current value, I multiply by 2, and I shove it back into your face, back into that part of the list. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so after that, when you print my list, you see that it has doubled. So then you can also actually generate the Fibonacci just like that. So now in this code, right, we aren't using the index I, but we are the for loop is just to repeat the same step multiple times. So the first two Fibonacci numbers are 1, 1. Then I believe you're familiar with the sequence that the next guy is going to be the previous two guys added up. Make sense? Right. So how do I do that in Python? Remember that in the previous lesson, we learned that in negative indexing, we put a negative index, right? It accesses the last element. The minus 1 is the last element, and minus 2 is the second last element, right?
Yeah.
So if I go ahead and take the Fibo minus 1 plus Fibo minus 2, then I'll take the last element and the second last element and add them together. And that is, by definition of the Fibonacci sequence, the next number in the sequence. So then I append it to the Fibonacci list, right? And if I do this many, many, many times, so if I illustrate this, maybe it's easier to if I, so so Fibo equals to 1, 1. And for I in range 10. Okay, so okay, let's just start simple with Fibo minus 1 plus Fibo minus 2. So let's just do it one time. So yeah, print Fibo. If I do this, right, you see that at first at line 2, right, Fibo is going to be 1 and 1 only. But after I append this one, it becomes 1, 1, 2. Does this code make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense, right? Okay, good. So if I let's say I copy lines 3 and 4 and I do it again, then now line 2 prints 1, 1, line 4 prints 1, 1, 2, and line 6 prints 1, 1, 2, 3. Because this last element, the line 5, it appends your last element, which is 2, plus the second last element, which is 1. So it appends 3 to the end of the list. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I do this multiple times, then you see that, hey, I'm actually generating, each time I'm appending to the list, right? Each time I do fibo.append, I append the last element, the current last element, plus the second last element.
Yeah.
And once I append, right, then now your last element has moved, right? Because your list is extended a bit more. So each time I'm taking the new last element plus the new second last element, which is by definition what a Fibonacci number is. So each time it extends it by the last two guys added up together. So that's how you generate the sequence like that. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I remove all of these, right, and put it in a for loop, right? So instead of copying, pasting the code multiple times, you can repeat it just like that, and then you see that that's how you generate the Fibonacci numbers. And if I don't print it at each step, right, I just like that, then it just prints the final list. And you can easily change this number to 100 to generate the first 100 Fibonacci numbers. So that's how powerful for loops can get.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now that's why people are always talking about automation and stuff, because especially with for loops and functions, right, which we'll talk about the next lesson, the behavior they can get starts to get really powerful already. Yeah. So on to the next thing. Next thing is you can have for loops within a for loop. It's called nested for loops. So just like how you have if statements within if statements, you can have for loops inside for loops. So if I have for I in range 2 and for j in range 3, then the for j in range 3, this second and third line will actually execute 2 times. So if you print I comma j, right, you see that these are the following outputs. So what does this allow you to do? It allows you to generate the multiplication table, right, with just 3 lines of code. So with just 3 lines of code, I've already generated the multiplication table up to 5 times 5. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so this part is okay if it's a bit confusing, but yeah, just know that you can have for loops within for loops and the behavior is powerful. So here are some exercises you can try in your own free time. You've actually done all of them already. Yeah, and this also brings us to the idea of 2D lists. So if your list, right, remember that inside a list, right, so my list equals to, inside a list you can have different data types also. So you can have 5, 3, you can have hello, and you can have world, right? And if your list can store different data types. That's the point. So can the list store a list as one of its elements? And the answer is yes. So the list, right, can store a list as one of its elements. So it could be like this, and let's say that inside the list I want like 0 and 1. So I print this, and you see that you have a list within the list. So the list 0, 1 is an element of the bigger list. Yeah. So you start having like inception where you have a list within a list.
oh,
So and this allows me to do something like two indexing. So if I access index 4, right? If I access index 4, I'm going to see another list. So the fourth the fifth element, right, the index 4 element of this my list is in fact a list itself. And from there, I can access another index. So let's say I access index 1, this prints 1. So you see that now there's 2 index, right? So what is this useful for? Combined with for loops, right, this can be used to do image processing. Because if you think about what images are, right, they are just RGB values. So for every pixel on the screen, so you have a 2D grid. You can represent a 2D grid as a list of lists, which is sometimes called a 2D list, a two-dimensional array. Then using a two-dimensional array, you can each element in a two-dimensional array is a triple of values, RGB. So that's how image processing occurs in a brief level. You're changing elements of the 2D list. And you can do things like for loops to maybe apply a blurring kernel over the thing, but over the image. So that's how your blurring effects work on like Instagram and things like that. So but we're getting a bit too far. So here are some extra exercises, right? You can also calculate sums, you can negate the elements in the list, you can calculate Fibonacci. With for loops, right, you can, the toolbox you have so far, mathematically speaking, you have quite a lot of options already lah. Okay. So in the next lesson, we'll learn something called functions. Yeah, and in that case, you learn, yeah, it's almost yeah, the foundation. Once you get for loops, the foundation is almost there already. Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
So that's all for today's lesson. Yeah. So if not, I'll see you next time. Bye.
okay. Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Bye.